Very nice that late at the day you've come to the maybe most interesting talk, but definitely a talk about something that has not been brought together yet. That is disruptive thinking in innovation agencies and psychedelics. I have the pleasure to introduce to you Erik Schäffner, who by education is a neuroscientist. So Erik, before you start, how did you as a neuroscientist make your way to the SPRIND agency, which is Germany's federal agency for disruptive innovations? How did that go?
That's a really good question. I think after a couple of years into my PhD thesis, or many people arrive at the point that they say, come on, it's enough. I need to open up my mind a bit and need something new. And I was working on myelin for so long, and I just needed something new. And in SPRIND, you have the application of all this crazy and interesting science that is happening. And this is really like a logical next step for me to kind of use this basic knowledge that you get from the science.
So you basically get all the wonderful ideas, the scientific ideas, maybe also business ideas on your table. Yes. You can review them. That's a good job.
I think it's one of the most interesting jobs, yeah. Yes.
Erik, you want to tell us about what SPRIND is doing and maybe say a word about why you're here?
Yeah, I will tell you what SPRIND is doing probably for the next 20 minutes. So I will do that. So first of all, thanks again for the invitation. I would have loved to come here earlier, but unfortunately we had an event ourselves yesterday. So I just arrived today, but talked to so many people already, and the crowd here is really diverse. It's super interesting. It's very inspiring, and quite different from the Silicon Valley tech type. So happy to be here. I chose an interesting title, I just realized. It's How Can We Change the World? And we at SPRIND have a very unique take on this. First of all, what is SPRIND or SPRIND? We're the Federal Agency for Disruptive Innovation, or the Bundesagentur für Sprunginnovation. I think we don't know ourselves whether we say SPRINT or SPRINT, so whatever this is. Our belief is that we can actually change the world with innovation. So the word innovation is a bit of a tricky one, because innovation can mean so many things. This is also innovation in some way. I will not go through all of the pictures, but you can see that innovation is not always the most advancing thing in the world. And for us, innovation is the search for ways to overcome the social, environmental, and economic challenges of our time, of our world. This sounds very big, and this is exactly what we want to do. We want to answer the big questions with big ideas and big innovations. So who are we? We are SPRIND. We are rather young. We were founded in 2019. I think you don't really see the picture here so much, but it doesn't matter. If you would see the picture, you could see a very industrial look and people with like serious faces trying to look a bit cool. So this is our idea. We want to be different from a bureaucratic, classical German federal agency. We're basically a mix of business people, of scientists, of people that share a common belief that we can change our society for the better. As Hendrik said, I'm a neuroscientist by training. I'm now a life science analyst and project manager with SPRIND, so I analyze many of the projects that we get. And then if we start a project, I'm gonna be in the team with the innovators and try to move it forward. So we are 60 employees, which is not too bad for the time that we have been founded. And we already have more than 1,300 projects submitted, so that's also quite a bit. What are we doing? So as we already mentioned, we are looking for breakthrough innovations. Breakthrough innovations are the innovations that target the big questions, and then something happens that might differentiate us from your classic venture capital partner, your classic investor. We are super, super critical in the projects that we choose. So basically, almost all of the projects we say no, but the ones that we say yes to, we really want to make these projects successful. So we really commit all of our human capital to these teams and want to do everything that we can do to make these projects successful. That means using our network, using money, obviously, using everything we have. And with this, we want to build the bridge between science and business. So I think you're all aware that the basic research in Germany is actually quite good, like really good. But then something happens. We call it the valley of death. that from the idea towards the application and the late stage funding, there is a big gap. And this gap has a trillion of reasons. One of the reasons is the mindset. I think we talked about this already before, that for example, in the States, people like to fail. They admit it. It's no problem for them. They take risks. This is something that doesn't really happen here. And we kind of want to change this atmosphere around this. We want to say, look, it's actually cool to found a company. It's cool to apply your science. You're not a loser if you leave basic research. It's actually interesting and great to use the knowledge that comes from basic research, put it into technology, and use it somewhere. So this is a bit the idea behind it. So what are breakthrough innovations? Obviously, they provide answers to underlying problems. I think that is clear. But something that is not so clear is that it normally involves unconventional methods. And I really want to stress this point. So the big innovations are normally innovations that not many people have, and that they're like really amazingly creative. And I said I'm in the life science space. So what I see is nothing. Now I see something. What I see is that many times the actual crazy cool ideas come from biophysics or biochemistry. So from the adjacent fields, because there you have this interdisciplinary effect that people use a different mindset, a different way of thinking, and adapt it towards another field. And this gives the unconventional ideas. And this is something really amazing. And with these ideas, there's this potential to really open up new markets, to disrupt markets, and to create completely new ones. So how do we assess these innovations? So I already said, we look whether this can really create a completely new market and whether it can be a nucleus for a new ecosystem. These are just, all these empty words that we have to put on the slides. But what we actually do as analysts is we have quite a nice catalog of criteria where we assess how good an innovation is. And now there's this very interesting point that really makes us different from venture capitalists. If you're a venture capitalist, you invest and you need return on investment within 2 to maximum 10 years. And if you don't see this possibility, you don't invest. We use taxpayers' money, so we have to be a bit cautious, otherwise many people will get angry. But our return is not the immediate money, our return is impact. So everything that kind of makes our society better in any way is great. We don't need that immediate money. And this puts us in a very luxurious position because we can use completely new criteria to judge whether these innovations have potential or not. And this is actually what we're doing. So one really amazing part of my work is actually to talk to the people behind the ideas. So you can imagine that any innovator we meet, these are people that have worked on this for years or decades sometimes. They burn for these topics. So if you have the conversation with these people, it's so inspiring. It's sometimes tough because then I'm sitting there in my chair in a Zoom interview and say, look, but here you did the wrong experiment. They get furious, and this is fine, and we can take it, and we like it. But this is something that is very inspiring also for us. So we want to see how they think, what drives them, what their passion is. And we really, it's one of these sentences that I use so many times, where we invest in the people, and this is something that is especially important in innovation. And from the whole discussions today about conscious leadership and all of these factors, this is super interesting, and I think I also take it home to our agency because this is something that we don't think about so much, to be honest. It's all about being the best, being passionate, burn for your topic, but it's not so much about how you integrate your self-well-being into this. And so this is something I will definitely take home, and I'm grateful for this input today. How do we actually work? So there are 2 ways that you can interact with us. The classic way is a bottoms-up approach. Anyone can submit the project idea at any time. So there are no certain timeframes. We can, in theory, support anything that is not military. So it can be a private person, it can be an established company, everyone can submit the application. And the other section that we have is our challenge program. Challenges are like a competition. And this time, we ourselves choose the topic. So we try to see where there's a market failure, where there's a need for new innovation, where there's maybe a topic that needs to put into the spotlight. And then we say, okay, we have this topic. Now come up to us and show your ideas. And this is the second line. So I already said it's quite a lot of projects. And of these more than 1,300 projects, we only chose 60 to become small projects. And this gets reduced to a smaller number later, but I talk a bit about the 60. So this is our way to get to know the innovators in a better way. So if we are interested and we have a conversation and everything seems interesting, we give small money, which means like 100,000, 200,000 euros. One can debate whether it's small money or not. But then we have like a get to know each other project. After this, normally 6 months, 1 year, we decide whether we like them, they like us, whether the chemistry is fine, whether there's still a need to invest. And if everything is perfect, we can take the next step. So there are 48 projects that didn't go to the next step. That doesn't mean that they failed. It means there's maybe a private investor that found it interesting and made the investment. It means maybe something didn't work and they need another year, but we still stay in contact. So our philosophy is that we're like a Kickstarter. We want to give this first spark, and then if the private money sector is ready, they should invest. I mean, perfect. We cannot do everything, so this is fine. But what happens then if all the stars align is that we create subsidiaries. This sounds a bit confusing because this is something that is normally not done, but as we are a federal agency, it's really tricky by European laws to invest into free business. There are a lot of laws that I don't want to go into detail, but basically we had quite some clever lawyers who found a way to circumvent this a bit. I think this is recorded, let's see. I think it's all, all okay. But what we can do is we basically create a subsidiary. We can invest a lot of money into this company, and they have a cooperation with the person who had the innovative idea in the first place. It's a bit of a complicated construct. It works okay-ish. Right now we have a new law that hopefully goes through maybe this year, maybe by the beginning of next year. It's called the SPRIND Freiheitsgesetz. And this will give us even more freedom to invest freely. Like, if this works the way we want it, we might be able to take equity like a normal VC, which would give us a lot more flexibility. But this way, we can invest up to, I think our biggest project is, 90 million euros for 5 years. So then we're talking about substantial amounts of money. Where do the projects come from? I already said we're technology agnostic. So basically, can be anything, classical things. We're talking about deep tech stuff. So it's a lot of software, a lot of hardware, energy. It's all the big problems of our everyday life. We have health, biotech, all this space. Biology, chemistry, synthetic biology, for those who don't know, who want to sit at home and read something interesting, the whole field of synthetic biology is super interesting. All the stuff that is now basically created through chemical industry in the future will be done through bioreactors and microbes and stuff. Very interesting, I can only recommend it. And stuff like engineering is also there. So this is also makes my job again interesting because our group of analysts is a mix of very different people, and the discussions are very interesting and very, also inspiring in a funny way. These are some of the projects that we funded. These are our subsidiaries. And I please hope that you will see that these innovations are different from the one I've shown in the first slide. So we just talk a bit about what we have done there. So for example, we have DNA origami technology to make new biochips. This can enable easy diagnostic. Maybe one day you just, have a drop of sweat, put it on your phone, and you have your whole biosignature, stuff like this, super interesting. We have drugs against cancer and Alzheimer's. We have one of my favorites. You see it a mini bit. So this is actually like a Pac-Man made of DNA. So you use DNA as a structure, not as a coding sequence. You really use the strands as a structure. And you can build them in a way that they can grab viruses. Because even if a virus mutates, the shape stays the same, more or less. So if you know the shape, you just build the Pac-Man, and then you inject them, and they catch all the viruses. This is something quite crazy, I find. Then we have, this is also an interesting one, because the person who invented this, I think he was one of the architects for the Fernsehturm, in the Alex in Berlin. Unfortunately, he passed away 2 months ago, but he was 93 and he kind of had these ideas and was happy that people took it and made something out of it. So this is a windmill that is 300 meters high. And what I didn't know, and probably many of you also don't know, is that in 300 meters height, there's a constant wind. So the energy efficiency is so much higher, and we're going to need this for future energy, especially in winter when you don't have sun. For photovoltaic, you need alternative sources, so this can be this windmill. Then you have stuff like membristors. This gets very geeky and nerdy. It's some equipment for new computing architecture, stuff that I also don't really understand. We have cool augmented reality glasses that can make stuff like Zoom obsolete. We have technologies that can eliminate microplastic from water, so it's actually tiny bubbles that you can put on basically at the delta where the river enters the sea. You can put a layer of tiny bubbles, and they can wash up all the microplastic pieces, and then you just take it off the surface. Also something interesting, and I mean, you can maybe already appreciate this is something that's not really interesting for an investor. How do I make money with this? So this is then something where we can step in. We have new production line for optics that probably one day will be in every phone, at least that's what we hope. We have new data storage architectures that are more based on neuronal network storage systems. Laser for nuclear fusion, I mean, it's a hot topic. Let's see about that. We built the laser, and this can even be used for other stuff in case fusion doesn't work. So I think it's still an interesting investment. And something that I find super interesting is also something I didn't know, that 8% of global CO2 comes from cement. That's an insane number. And we have a new cement that's based on olivine. It's a different type of mineral. This is completely CO2 neutral or even negative. So this might have a massive impact. So I think quite some interesting projects, and they will become more and more in the future. I also talked about these challenges. We have 5 running challenges on different topics where we decided, okay, this is something where we need to get active. We have new computing concepts. Actually, the way computers work is super old. It hasn't changed in the last years, but it requires so much energy, so we need new innovation in this field. We have a challenge on broad spectrum antivirals, which I find quite interesting. There's a new pandemic will come rather sooner than later. We talked to Munich Re. You might know Munich Re as a reinsurance company. They are really good at calculating risks, and I think I don't want to share the percentage of pandemic risk for the last years because we want to keep a good mood. We have a challenge in carbon to value. So if we manage to sequester CO2 from the atmosphere, which we can already do to some extent, it would create a massive business opportunity if we can use the CO2 for something useful. And this is also something we're working on. Long duration energy storage, I think it's quite clear to everyone that this is something that we need if we want to be independent of fossil fuels. And this is a challenge that is ongoing, or like the application phase is open. So if you know anyone who might be in this field, please share this information with your friends. So this is in this field of synthetic biology. What we are doing, or what we want to see there, is that you use waste, whatever kind of waste, put it in a bioreactor with some genetically modified microbes, and these microbes then produce a chemical or compound that can be used for mass production of new products. So this is kind of the whole process of waste to product. I think it's quite interesting. And then we also have a new program. It's called the SPRIND Funke, the Spark. And this is also currently open for applications about tissue engineering, where we want to see a transplantation of tissue that has been generated in an innovative fashion. Yes, this is probably the interesting question for you. I cannot say too much about this. What I can tell you is that we see the topic. So we see that there's increasing number of depressed patients, that there's actually very little innovation in the field. So I'm not talking about basic research. I'm talking about actual drugs that are authorized. And we see that psychedelics have the potential to be disruptive because they're completely different from our classic drug medicine system. And therefore, it's something that is obviously interesting for us. And I can only say we have very good conversations. We are really getting into the field, and we see what's possible there. So that's all I can tell you for now, okay? It should be enough. So I hope that you believe with me that we can actually change the world and that innovation doesn't always need to be the 20th delivery hero or gorillas or Flink or whatsoever, that there's also innovation that can be good, and especially if you have this criteria that you want to use this innovation to make society better. So yeah, let's hope for a good future together. Thank you. Happy to take questions. Should I just choose?
Who's first?
Thank you very much for your talk. It was very, very interesting. And I was wondering about the whole section of education, like disruptive education. Can you say something about that?
Yes, very good question. So we get our money from the Ministry of BMWK, Economy and Climate and Education and Research. And therefore, we always have to be a bit careful which topics we can cover that the other ministries are not covering. So we are a bit more deep tech focused. We have one project on new school systems, but to be honest, this is not our core business. So we discuss it all the time because we actually want to expand into this space as well. But right now, it's basically the deal with the ministries from when we were set up that we focus on the deep tech space. But I think quite convinced that this will change over the years when people also understand, or hopefully understand, that we don't do the worst job, then maybe we can take over some of these projects.
Yes, thank you. I just would be interested in knowing, how does your work relate to companies that are on a market? So there will always be the competition question. And then, I mean, you mentioned the European Union thing that is about this. So let's say there would be companies who to bring out psychedelic products on the market, or some other, let's say, flowers or something. So not to talk about psychedelics. Is this an argument for you to not invest into this because you would destroy the market competition?
No. So we would look at this company, and if we see that this new compound, for whatever reason, has a bigger potential than the other compounds on the market, we could and would invest. If we see that the compound is so good that the private investors also recognize this potential, we would say, okay, we take a step back. There's a free market, you take over. If you get your investment from someone else, we don't need to do it because we are a bit more niche in this direction. But only because it's an established company and there are other companies on the market, there's competition, it's not a no for us.
Thanks a lot for the interesting talk. So in the end, you only briefly mentioned psychedelics, and I wonder what kind of companies or people would you talk to? Are those pharmaceutical companies? And as a federal agency, do you have any influence on the legislation in the sense of legalizing or speeding up legalization of certain substances?
Yeah, very good question. So we want to talk to as many people as possible. I mean, with Henrik and Gerd Gründer, we, I think, have two of the best people in Germany that are kind of our allies and that we try to understand the whole infrastructure better. Regarding legislation, it's a clear yes and no. So what we can do and what we have done in the past is to voice our opinion. So we are kind of, the state knows that we're a bit of a rogue unit. We are not really what the others do, so we can really freely voice our opinions, and we have position papers and stuff like this. And it's a bit of a different topic, but IP transfer from universities, if you want to have your startup, it's a horrible topic in Germany. IP transfer is really bad. And then we created a model system with new contracts of how this could be done. So we have some room to express this. And we like to be the champion for these new things. So it's possible. Change legislation is quite a big thing, but some lobbying we can do. So it depends, yes. But we can do this, yes.
Thanks for the talk. You said that your agency wants to use innovation for a better world, but better implies a moral framework, or like ethics, philosophy, and that implies a value hierarchy. What is more important, the planet or poor people? And you need to sometimes make a decision, like polar bears or economic growth.
Yeah.
So have you written something like that down, or how do you decide your value hierarchy in the organization?
Yes, very good question. So when we were set up in the beginning, all these selection criteria were developed by a very diverse group of people, also involving philosophy and ethics committees. So we tried to integrate this as good as possible, but it's really hard. I mean, your examples were actually already really good. It's really hard to find like very strict criteria. You would not say, okay, polar bear equals 3 hectares of forest or something. This we cannot do. So it will always be a result of discussions that we have internally. But from the beginning, this was tried to integrate into the criteria. That's all I can say. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, half of the room, almost half the room are women. Only guys want to say something.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very inspiring story also from the last 4 years. And I think one can say that SPRIND itself is a disruptive innovation. Yes. So maybe you want to say some more about how this was founded.
Yes.
Might be inspiring. Thank you.
I think you talked to our CEO because he always said SPRIND is the first Sprunginnovation, so ourselves. So you're completely right. Actually, the story is quite interesting because in America, there's the DARPA. It's also a big innovation institute, but for military projects. And at some point, some DARPA employee called the husband of Angela Merkel and said, hey, you have to tell your wife that you need something like this in Germany. And he then installed SPRIND. She couldn't, like, when we were founded, she was not chancellor anymore, but it's all based on her groundbreaking work before. So this is how the idea came up. And then they tried to look for a CEO and kind of brought together people who really did an outstanding job in German business economy section. And they were looking for a CEO, and Raphael, who is our CEO now, was in this group. And then they decided, hey, Raphael, actually, you should do it. We don't need someone else. And he's this type of personality that we're always lacking a bit in Germany. So he owned the cinema, he went bankrupt, he didn't study, then he went into software. Like he has this crazy CV that we always see from these American founders, but it's not so much a German thing. So he was the perfect fit for this. And he basically brought together his network and people who he knew had the same spirit. And in the end, I think, I don't know, in the beginning were maybe 20 people, and there's not a single government person, so not a single ministry fellow or something. So it's completely different from scratch, and this makes it quite interesting. Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for your talk. I was just wondering, maybe also a little bit in the direction of the question that was asked regarding the ethical concerns. Like, once you invest money, and I mean the projects or the topics that you chose to show to us were all like really promising stuff, but how much influence can you actually exert like on the companies that you chose to support? And if they then maybe go in a direction that is not so promising or not so much in alignment with the goals that you once had when you selected them?
Yeah, yes, also good point. So what we normally do is we try to put some of our people into the company as well. And this is also something they like. So because this makes the whole communication between SPRIND and the actual innovators much easier. So we don't want to have control. I mean, we really choose carefully who we support, you know, and then we kind of want to be convinced that they can do a good job. And of course, it can always happen that it goes the other way. But we try to be so rigorous with our process that we just hope it's going to be good. And we can always pull the plug in case it doesn't work at all or they completely change directions. And as I said, we partner up with the teams. So it's really a constant exchange of ideas, constant planning together, the use of our networks. So there are quite many factors that should prevent the company going in a completely different direction.
Hi. Wait, hello? Sorry.
Yeah.
How do you balance the likelihood of success versus the potential impact? like, and especially maybe considering that actual innovation or breakthrough is also against the scientific consensus, where like maybe experts in the field would tell you that this doesn't work, but maybe someone does it anyway, and then it works because it's an actual like breakthrough. So yeah, how open is your institute for ideas which are maybe very unlikely to happen, but if they worked, then they would mean like an impact beyond imagination,
Yes.
let's say.
Very good. I mean, this is exactly the struggle of our everyday work, to kind of differentiate the insanely stupid from the insanely interesting projects. And this is really not easy. And of course, we need to be the ones who recognize the potential that no one else recognizes. Poof, this is quite a challenge. What we do is, I mean, you said against the scientific consensus, and that's a tricky one. So if we see that it's absolute bullshit, we say no. If we see somewhere a glimmer of hope that this can actually work or has a potential, this small project of the 60, it's only 100 to 200,000 euros investment. This is something we can do rather easily and kind of give the people the chance to kind of show what they are believing in. So this is something we can do quite flexibly. But actually, the project you describe is exactly the one we're looking for. One that has big potential. Many people don't believe in it, and it will take a lot of time until you see the potential. Like this DNA origami stuff, you make threads from DNA. It's how do we put this on the biochip? It's completely weird, but we went in early, and now slowly people see the potential, and it's interesting. So I would love projects like this.
So let's take the bullshit question as the last one, because we're past 6 o'clock. So thank you very much, Erik. This was a great insight into what government agencies can do think about, and not only the innovator space, where so much talk about innovation. Yeah? And I also like the bullshit detector stuff. Yeah? Thank you. Thank you.